Okay.
Hello, James Jackson.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I'm excited for today. This is my first webinar with you guys.
Oh,
Great.
okay. This is my first webinar with you guys. How about that? So we're both newbies. Let's see how we come out at the end here.
Oh, I'm sure you'll do much better. I don't have to say much. You have to say things.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll wait for, I spoke with Christian earlier, so he plans to join us. He said he planned to join 11:45.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So basically what I told him is that I'll go into, I have you guys do like a 30, 45-second bio on yourself, and then we'll dive into the conversation. And as I mentioned, those questions that I sent over to y'all are mainly just to help spark conversation. And I'm hoping that I could be more of a facilitator, more than someone who can just start asking these questions. So my hope is to, you guys drive the conversation, and I'm just here to navigate it.
Oh, okay. I thought you were one of the experts.
Oh no. I'm here to learn from y'all.
Okay. I'm still looking for, let's see. Let's see. In which thread did you put the questions? I see the email.
Oh, I can put them in the chat for you.
Okay, that would be great. And that way I don't have to look away. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, Sidney. Good afternoon. Pleasure to meet you virtually.
Yes. I mean, we met briefly when you were here in Utah.
Yeah, I wish I got an opportunity to spend more time with you. That's on me. I apologize about that, but I've heard a lot of great things about you.
Well, I am still breathing to try to live up to them, Christian.
Well, just saying, you got some big shoes to fill there with Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Jackson, that's right.
Awesome.
Well, I'll be sure to guide her properly, so there's not so much pressure. So
yes,
hopefully I hope I do a good job on my end and making sure that she feels I'm just fine. Okay. Otherwise, we did her a disservice, but I'm sure we'll do all right.
Yeah, I'm sure that too.
Good. Well, I tell you what, I have heard that you are an absolute rock star, Mr. Christian. So I am, I'm trying not to be on here and be in awe, right? So.
Hey, Christian, sister, I don't mess it up. How do I pronounce your last name?
Nwasike.
Nwasike.
Yeah.
Got it. Nwasike.
Yeah. Phonetically, like WASEE and then KAY, like Mary Kay.
Nwasike. All right. Got it.
Okay, so what do you wanna to pick our brains with, or James, just kind of give us some guidance.
Yeah, I'll be, basically through your intros, I'll probably, that might spark some questions just from your intros alone. Mm-hmm. But my main goal is to help the conversation keep going and growing, leveraging your expertise, with Christian in the financial advisor field, mm-hmm. Sidney, your field in regarding entrepreneurship, in Zach's field as far as access to capital, and really just try to facilitate the conversation that way. And you know, dive into a little bit about tax and housing, and anything else that you feel, you know, if something's on your heart and soul, you know, go ahead and chime in about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Zach.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Zach, how
Good.
are you?
I am good.
Good, 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 good. Good to see your name here.
Yeah, I'm gonna find some better lighting here. Kind of look like I'm in a cave here.
Yeah.
I reposted the Google Doc, so you guys have that in the chat to access the questions, but I don't plan to go through all of them. I'm mainly just going off of your all's expertise. You know, I hope I only need to ask 1 or 2 questions out of here. You guys will just go. But Zach, as I was telling them, I'm going to have y'all do like a 30, 45-second bio about yourself to start off with, and then we'll just go ahead and dive right in. That way people know who's gracing them with their presence, and knowing that we got some cool folks here.
Zach, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, sir, for asking.
And I hope we should all get together going forward, us talking, because y'all, you know, all 3 of y'all are doing some amazing things in Utah separately. But I think collaboratively there can be some true power here. So, you know, there's always I like to say I play chess, but I'm not a very good chess player, but I like the strategy of chess, and I'm always thinking 5-6 moves ahead. So there's a method to this madness, and inviting you guys to participate here on this call.
Yeah, no, totally. And James, in regards to your comments on chess, I met I think he's the first Black grandmaster chess player in the United States. He's in Harlem, and he's, you know, Joseph Spence. You guys know Joseph Spence? It's his cousin, and I met him last week. So we're gonna try to bring him to Utah for some stuff too.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Yeah, he took 2 schools in Harlem, 2 terrible schools in Harlem test-wise, taught them chess, and they won national championships within like 2 years in Harlem. Incredible.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I always thought about that, like a black a black, you know, grand chess player. Never met one, so I'm gonna look him up. I should have just
His
Googled.
name's Maurice Ashley. I'll grab his website and send him the chat here.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I used to play chess a lot when I was a kid, and then haven't played in a long time, but I was always fascinated by the strategy, and how you apply it to just life strategy.
And that,
you know, so I always think about it that way.
Yeah, let's see. I have 2 screens, so I'm trying not to look left, right. Let's see if I could.
Here you guys go. There's his website.
Thank you.
I don't see it. You sent it?
Yeah, it's in the
chat?
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me go to everyone.
Oh, maybe it just went to James. Hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, it was just sent directly to me.
Let me do everyone. There we go.
There we go.
All right, Nicole, is there anything on your end that you need to do to let me know the green light or whatever, or we're just running with it?
No, that's up to you. We're all good on our end. We are recording so that we can host it for your site afterward. We have some attendees arriving, and we have a chat going for them as well.
Oh, great. All right, well, they're getting all the inside scoop on our goods right now. I didn't even realize there's people joining already.
I know. We all get the pleasure of listening to the fun banter back and forth.
Yes.
It's a little behind the scenes.
Oh, good.
I did notice that it looks like some of your videos have turned off. That's okay if you want to keep them off, but I think it looks like James is back, Zach, and it looks like Christian's videos might have been off.
Yeah,
All right,
I was
everyone is back.
trying to fix something on my face real quick and
Oh.
didn't want to figured it to not be so professional. Me, you know, people looking at me all up in my business, so I'm trying to work on some things here.
That is okay. Yeah, so you're good to start whenever. We have 3 attendees so far, it looks like. You're welcome to wait for a few more or start whenever you'd like.
Okay. And I know more listen in than go live anyway. That's what happened with the last one. We had more people listen afterwards.
Yeah, we had quite a few registrants too, though, so I wouldn't be surprised that we get quite a few more.
Yeah, we'll give people a couple of more minutes and then we'll get the party started.
Perfect.
Appreciate y'all who joined on time. Y'all get a bonus points for that. And I'm excited to get this conversation going here shortly on closing the racial wealth gap with some esteemed panelists here that I've got to know over just this past year, really. Christian and Sidni within the last few months.
Awesome.
Wow, it's always cool meeting new people, doing amazing things, and really elevating just our community overall. So it's great. And it was funny, Zach, it didn't hit me till I had lunch with your sister the other day that Adam and I both went to Cottonwood. And I didn't put it together that he was your brother. You're on mute there, Zach.
Yeah, there's 5 of us running around Salt Lake. So 2, I'm the oldest, Adam, and then my twin sisters, and then Jordan.
Okay, I don't think I've met Jordan before.
Yeah, he's in commercial real estate.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason did not put 2 and 2 together. I was like, because I saw him at your house last year. I was chatting for him a little bit, and then sitting down with Megan. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But Adam Smith, Zach Smith, such common names, never really put it together.
Yeah, very common names.
All right, we'll wait just a few more minutes here. And we'll get started. Thank you all for joining here for the panel discussion on closing the racial wealth gap. We'll get going here. I'll give go to 12:05 and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Work on the people who joining late, jumping from one call to the other, or heating up their food during this lunch hour. I know, Christy, you're putting something in your mouth real quick, and I'm hoping to do that in between this and my next call.
That is true.
Right now, I'm just finishing my smoothie.
Eating healthy, I see, huh?
Hey, when you come back from vacation, you gotta cleanse yourself a little bit, you know, eating that vacation food, and you feel that vacation weight. Funny, you prepare for the beach body just to eat.
Yeah, don't want to put you on the spot, Jebs, but inquiring minds want to know where you went on vacation and what you ate.
We just went to Newport Beach, California. Michelle and I had a wedding there from a former colleague that she used to work with, and we just made a family trip out of it and stayed for 5 days, hung out there, and had a house just along the boardwalk, and yeah, just do what you do at the beach: eat, drink, and be merry. Yeah. So it was a good little break from everything. I was telling you earlier, I think I gave everybody like a month heads up that I'm checking out for a few days. But I think people had it on their clock when I was returning, because no sooner I get to the airport, people are texting me and emailing me. It's like, wait, hold on, like give me this one more day to come home and refresh myself. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and just get started? I know there'll be more people joining later, but to appreciate those who joined on time. And then also, this call is being recorded and will be posted to Utah Business's website with their webinars. It's going to be posted to Utah Black Chamber's website as well. And we can blast this out for all to listen to later, because I think it's an important conversation, even now and still 2022, about closing the racial wealth gap. We've been, over the last couple of years, we've seen this more and more come to light, with the pandemic hitting, and then we saw the challenges of businesses accessing the PPP loans, and it just expanded the conversation of, we see now how there is barriers, systemic barriers that we're trying to mitigate, and hopefully over time we can look forward to more solutions as we try to close this gap, and how we as a community, as small business owners, as corporations, can be better participants in this challenge here to create equitable playing fields when it comes to growing wealth for our families. And I have some great panelists here from the different diasporas when it comes to wealth building and growing. And I'm excited. I've got to know these people over the last few months, over the last year, and I'm excited to be just to be part of the attendees and just listen in, and as they share in their expertise about how we can all engage in closing the racial wealth gap. So what I'm going to do is just have them introduce themselves. I'll go with my Brady Bunch screen here and go clockwise, and of course it'll be ladies first, but just introduce themselves, their background, and then we'll get the conversation started. So Sidni, we'll go ahead and start us off.
Well, thank you so much. I am so grateful to be here and part of this esteemed panel in this conversation. I am Dr. Sidni Shorter. I am first and foremost a passionate advocate for small business as an entrepreneur, and I am the president and CEO recently appointed to the Utah Black Chamber of Commerce. And I'll say this, I'm pretty old, so I'll stop right there because that story can get really long, but just know that my reason and purpose to be here is really to represent the voice of small businesses.
Great, thank you, Sidni. Christian, go next to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Name's Christian Nwasike. I am principal and executive managing partner at Practice Management Consultants. We are a boutique consulting firm that works exclusively with wealth management firms in the industry to empower their Black or African American workforce to become the best versions of themselves possible. Our sole mission is working to bridge the racial wealth gap in America in one generation, leveraging financial advisors who belly face with ethnically diverse clients to increase financial literacy in the Black or African American community.
Awesome. We can dive really heavy into that, being here in Utah. There's ethnic financial advisors, but we'll get more into that in a little bit here. And Zach, go next to you.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be on this panel. My name is Zachary Smith. I'm a native of Salt Lake City, born and raised, went to Skyline High School, went to the University of Utah. I've worked at Zions and Wells, and now I work at Crescent Capital, focused on strategic relationships. And I'm really excited to be a part of this panel to really move the needle for people of color. I've got a saying, hire us or wire us, is my big theme, and African Americans, we need opportunities, and I'm looking forward to having some comments on this panel. So thank you, James.
Awesome. So very exciting to start this conversation off, but I really just want to get real general here. It is the year 2022, and we're still talking about the racial wealth gap, even 60 years after the civil rights movement. And then, 70s and 80s, there were some acts passed to help as far as affordable housing, bridging that gap into housing and elsewhere. But yet we're still having this conversation about closing this wealth gap here. So, and I'll just open this up and have someone go and jump in and start this conversation off. Like, how are we still addressing this issue? Like, why are we still here?
You want me to start? I'll start and I'll let these guys go really, really deep. And I'll start from this perspective is that what we are experiencing is, my opinion, is weaved into the fabric of this nation. Born of policy and both greed in some instances, or in most. So what we are still experiencing is centuries of discrimination and exploitation that have left Black Americans poorer than white Americans. And if we begin to look at the numbers in recent years and look at it by Black households, when we talk about the national wealth in proportion to the US population, the numbers I have here most recently of 2021 is that $12.68 trillion in household wealth is it seems that it may be a lot, but the total racial wealth gap is 10.14 trillion. That's the gap.
Wow.
And so it continues to grow. And I'll toss this with this comment that until we are truly serious about policy, we will continue to see the divide grow.
Mm-hmm.
Sidni,
Chris, I see you're not in your head that you want to dive into this from what Sidni was talking about.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. Sidni, those were great comments that you made. And James, what an amazing way to start the conversation, right? I think that, if we take a step back and we look at this amazing experiment that the founding fathers described as America, right? We are an experiment. Capitalism is something that is new and requires constant adjustment, as we've seen. And as Sidni, clearly pointed out, that in the formation of this country that we so love, our home, our country, there were policies that were created that maybe at the time hadn't really been baked out, that we still see impacts of today. Many of us scholars in the industry argue that these were deliberate policy set in place to stop, economic prosperity in certain ethnic demographics. But today, I'm happy to announce that a lot of policymakers at the state and federal level are aware of these systemic barriers and are taking giant steps to actually pull these barriers down. So conversations like these really excite me. Because we talk about the meat and potatoes, and we're able to synthesize this and send these to our policymakers for them to expand on policy modification that today still discriminates significantly against ethnic minorities in America.
Mm.
Yeah, and Christian and Sidni, I think you're dead on. And what's interesting to me is if you think about generational wealth, right? Unless you're a tech CEO that invents something new today and you create a bunch of wealth, generational wealth takes time, right? And most of the wealth that's been created in this country has been tied to real estate. 70% of wealth in this country is tied to real estate. And although African Americans only have 40% of house ownership, white men and women have close to 75%. So there's a huge gap just there alone. That as our elders pass on, African Americans, we don't get that generational hand-me-down, right? We don't get this pool of money that all of a sudden shows up in our bank accounts when our elders pass along, and then we can do interesting things with that. We can create businesses, we can buy real estate, we can invest in the markets, etc. And historically, we just haven't been able to participate holistically as a race in these markets and in these opportunities.
Yes. When we talk about the systemic implications. So we talk about or reflect on 250 years of slavery, then followed by a century of Jim Crow segregation, economic exploitation, reinforced by state-sanctioned violence. But then we look at the 20th century where Black people systemically were left out of opportunities for home ownership and higher education. And so the inequities that persisted over time still cumulatively land us where we are. And so when we talk about those policies, it's really an approach of dismantling, but also in creating what is effective for the times we are in now.
So what policies, I imagine real estate could be part of this, but are there certain policies that could be pivotal in really closing the gap here?
I'm going to sit back on that one.
I'll pivot that to Zach, and then.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is if you look at just fairness, right? Fairness in the workforce, fairness in earnings, etc. We're not asking for anything more than just fairness. African American men make less than make 20% less than white men make in the workforce. African American women make 64% of what white men make. And I would say African American women are the backbone of the African American society, the African American community, etc. And so just fairness and those equal pay, equal rights, equal opportunities. It's very basic things in my mind, but yet they still exist today.
I think we can address policy around biases in public investment and the criminal justice system as well. But as Zach said, also when we talk about pay disparities, but access to affordable capital for those of us who are brave enough to step out on our own and start small businesses, we feel the impact of those challenges. And when we talk about the banking construct and access to affordable capital, we definitely know that there is a lot of room for better policies as it relates to that really cut across racial lines. And then when we talk about housing, right? I mean, we look at what housing valuations look like in certain neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
That is a reality. And I definitely think that there should be some policies to address these inequities. And it's not so much a dependency on government to fix it, but we know that the construct of government is what we abide by and what we live by. And some of us are able to really lean into that and benefit greatly. And then there are those of us who are we don't have, we're not afforded that opportunity or that liberty.
Just to piggyback on Zach and Sidney's comments, James, I think about it from four perspectives, and I'm forming my thoughts as we go along. So the first audible would be, what would be the economic impact of actually, allowing us to prosper, tearing down these barriers, right? And how do we even step up to the plate when those opportunities are created? And like Zach mentioned, home ownership is one of those key areas, right? And there were some statistics that were put out recently that suggested that just improving access to housing credit can add about 770,000 new homeowners. That adds $218 billion in sales transactions on home ownership into the market. 218 billion is a real number, right? Because that reverberates back into communities to pay employees, contractors, so on and so forth, right? The other aspect would be facilitating access to higher education. I'm very excited about what this present administration is doing on a federal level, trying to eradicate or get rid of this student loan debt that plagues so many of us today. And just by increasing access, right, to education for Black or African American children, over time can also add upwards of $90 billion to the economy in the next 5 years, right? So increasing access to education is crucial. And what do we mean by increasing access? This narrative that's come out that suggests that our kids should take student loans for 4-year bachelor degree programs, where similar education programs across the globe are free. Is something that we just kind of have to work through and eradicate. So these higher costs, right, to get into institutions of higher learning, Ivy League schools, need to kind of be reset to allow everyone an opportunity to access. And then, as Sidni talked about, providing fair and equitable lending opportunities to Black entrepreneurs, right? So the argument is that if we are able to access capital, like our colleagues or who are of the majority ethnic demographic in America today, that we can create an additional $13 trillion in business revenue, which could potentially create another 6.1 million jobs for Black or African Americans, right? And so when we talk about a path towards equity or equality in wealth, I think these are the areas that we really need to, kind of focus on a federal level and then state level in terms of policy. And then we can also, partner with corporations in local communities to do more.
Yeah. Thank you, Christian. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Christian, you're dead on. And I think you think about access, right? Like 74% more Black Americans were denied credit in 2019, right? And even when we do get credit, we're often charged 100 to 200 basis points more than our white counterparts. So we're talking about just access, right? You think about Black businesses, people that create their own business in the Black community have 12 times more wealth than folks that don't create their own business, right? And then all that said, you look at what we see today in technology and venture capital, and this new rise of entrepreneurs. 97% of venture capital funding goes to white males. 97%, and yet they represent a very small part of the country. Not a small part, but a large, but definitely a minority across the country and stuff. But 97% of venture capital funding goes to white males. If you level that playing field and you give equal access, right, to capital, let these individuals create businesses, grow, work hard, realize the American dream. No one wants anything for free, but just access to grow businesses, I think would change the market dramatically.
Right. What you both have done here, and I thank you for putting the numbers, right? Because that matters. Because it is all economics. It is absolutely all economics. And so what you have described is the economic ecosystem. And so how I often approach this is that, as Zach continues to say, and I hear you loud and clear, and you're absolutely right, it's like we're not asking for anything extra. We're not asking for anything special. It is just a matter of my approach to my business is to serve my clients and give them the best services that I possibly can so that they can fulfill their mission, grow their businesses, create a workforce, generate revenue, make a profit, right? That's what they're there for. So when I look at the economic ecosystem, if there is truly this opportunity for everyone to participate equitably, have access equitably, then what you look at is a very effective economic ecosystem where everyone is a vital part of that ecosystem. When we have these inequalities and these inequities and these barriers, these gaps, and just the mere fact that so much of it for businesses is not affordable, then it costs the ecosystem something.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to ensuring that the opportunities are there for everyone and the ecosystem only grows and it benefits everyone. But when those barriers are there, those poor policies are there, the inequities are there, it costs the system something. And so until we really begin to look at it, I believe, through those lenses, let's look at what it's costing it to have these barriers and have these poor policies. You know, I think we may get to a point where we want to make the shift. I'm hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sidni, you bring up a very good point, right? Because McKinsey and Company put out a study in 2020 where they suggested that if we were to bridge the racial wealth gap in America today, i.e., follow through on these structural policies that are in place that hamper access to education, hamper access to home ownership, hamper access to business capital, that we could actually see an increase in the GDP of our country in excess of $5 trillion over the next 5 years. Now, these are real numbers, right? The GDP of the United States 2021, 2020, I'm sorry, was about, Zach, correct me if I'm about $17 trillion, give or take, plus or minus a few $100 billion. Now, we are looking for opportunities to expand America's GDP to continue being the largest economy on the planet. And what we're arguing today is if we just remove these structural barriers, we can immediately add $5 trillion in the next 5 years and continue being that force to reckon with as an economic player in the global market.
Globally, yes.
Right behind us is China, right? Right on our heels and projected to grow it and become an economic superpower. And I think that, to your point, if we just focused on the impact of hampering, Black or African Americans the opportunity to play, if we just remove that, we could easily take a lot of pressure off our industries and sectors, right? That we're pushing to produce economic output, right? To impact everybody in America. So I love your perspective. And I think that if we showed our community how much more value we add to the bigger pie, we change the conversation from give me access because it's the right thing to do, to give me access because I add value and it's the right thing to do.
Right. I teach an entrepreneurship class for a local community college system. And just on yesterday during the class, there's a quote by Oprah that says, if you undervalue your work, people will undervalue you. And I say, if you undervalue you, people will undervalue your work. And so we also have to begin to take very serious the narrative that we are given, but also the narrative that we tend to create because of environment, circumstances, and things like that. We have to be very, very cognizant of that because at the end of the day, it costs someone money somewhere in this system.
Man, you guys unpacked so much within just like these last 20 minutes that I have to summarize it real quick for the audience because y'all just went in. I only talked for 37 seconds and then boom, like I knew I had an awesome panel. So there's 4 main things that we picked up as far as how we as a nation can close the racial wealth gap, right? 1 is access to higher education. 2 is access to housing, home ownership. 3 is the access to capital for affordable access to capital for small businesses. And the 4th one is an equitable paying field when it comes to a workforce, right? So those are the 4 things that you guys really tackled. Real estate was the biggest one, of course. And then they all kind of funneled into that. Well, in order to have access to real estate, we need more money. Pay us more. Get out. Let's get it. Not more, but pay us more to the level that our white counterparts are being paid, right? If we're building our small businesses, treat us like the other white small businesses out there, right? And so this is all we're asking for, is get us to that level. And then on top of that, you summarized a couple of things where we as a community can somehow figure out. There are some biases there that we need to work on removing. And then there are some biases within ourselves, it sounds like, that we need to remove as well. And we can participate holistically and not wait for policies, because we know how long it takes when we wait for the government to do anything, right? And so based on that, when we go into corporations, we go into there, how can they better engage and recognize that not only is the inequities of pay, not only in male and female, but in people of color as well? What can companies do to be better at that? And then Christian, I'll toss this to you. So 2 questions. You work in a field where there is not a lot of people of color. We talked about this earlier. I think we counted on one hand how many financial advisors or bankers in Utah that are Black. And so my first question, we'll start with the first question, is how can corporations recognize and what can they do to step up, right, to get an equitable paying field for our community here?
Yeah, James, that's a great question, right? There is, in terms of financial literacy and how we share information with our communities, I'll just drop a couple numbers and I'll come back to answering your question. You may have to remind me about this. Corporations have policies that suggest that if you have been, you had a run-in with the law, incarcerated, that you can't necessarily, take a job in the financial services industry. The interesting thing with that company policy is that it runs in total contradiction with what truthfully happens on the ground in America today, which is, as a Black male or African American man, I am 5 times more likely to have a run-in with local law enforcement than my white counterparts, right? And we've seen over time that Black or African Americans have larger populations in the criminal justice system than our white counterparts, right? So from an employment opportunity standpoint, when corporations stand up and say, "Hey, we can't find qualified Black people," that's the code for, "Hey, man, too many of you guys have blemishes on your records, and we can't hire you." So I think that there has to be at a state level conversations with local law enforcement to really review what some of these ludicrous arrest scenarios that are so eloquently cooked up and shared with media as if we are a dangerous community to engage with. And so when you take that conversation, if you're able to impact that, then you will start seeing increased numbers, right? I believe in the financial advisor field in terms of wealth management. James, you and I met a few weeks ago in Salt Lake, and we were talking about how many Black or African American bankers, to your point, and financial advisors are actually in Salt Lake. And I did a search, and I didn't find any at the time. I'm happy to report today that there's one potential financial advisor in Salt Lake City, and that's a start, right? Today, I serve as chairman of the board of directors for the Association of African American Financial Advisors. We are the largest trade organization for Black wealth managers in the country, and our numbers in terms of financial advisors that actually belly face with clients providing wealth solutions is one that has always caused me to somewhat kind of pause. I wonder why we don't have more people joining the organization and spreading gospel about wealth management. And so I think that if corporations shared more about the opportunities that are available either affiliate or, direct affiliation or kind of, working as a broker, that our community will feel more comfortable engaging, right, in these types of professions, because what we're finding out is people like doing business with people they like and trust.
And look like.
And so if corporations do some direct marketing in our communities to show opportunities that opportunities that are available, we can actually get more talent into these reins if we adjust corporate policy to kind of take off, some of these harmful employment, I would say, questions. We can also see significant increases, right, in applications. And then the third part is if we have businesses, Black businesses that have access to capital and can actually employ Black people, we can work through a lot of these nuances on our own because we understand our community. So, just from my perspective, those are three things I think we can work on to actually increase, right, the number of Black or African Americans that participate in the wealth management field. And then that would extrapolate into banking, insurance, and other fields that work with wealth management.
And Christian, you're dead on, because I think, as an African American man, growing up, I looked at, where are African American men succeeding, right? And I looked towards my dad. And my dad was, one, a professional athlete first, and then two, he was a businessman. So I immediately followed his path of what I could do because that's what I saw my dad do, right? But if we can show African American men and women, there's just not two paths to success, right? They can be authors, they can be lawyers, they can be doctors, they can be businessmen, they can be dentists, and by African Americans showing what we do day to day, we then empower the next generation to say, if he can do it or she can do it, I too can do it as well.
I have another quote. I do live by them. The absence of exposure is terminal. And so being exposed to see yourself, see something you're interested in, it is critically important. And so we do have to work to elevate what we're doing. So one of the things that I hear even in our conversation is this notion of, and I'm glad you pointed it out, James, you kind of said it around policy, because policy is so important, and much of what we are experiencing is because of policy. I had a very interesting conversation with another small business before I left Louisiana. And there was a chamber that had just had a report done, and the results of the report stated that the issues around the economy in that community were directly related to the lack of inclusion. That it was the implicator of why that community was so stagnant from an economic standpoint. And so in the conversation with that small business owner, he pointed out that, and the number one factor is crime. So of course, I understood what that was code for. That was code for, this is, you're saying you're not included, but you're not included because you have these high numbers of African-American males who are committing crime. And so I let him finish his statement, and I asked the question. I said, do you think that we should possibly consider this implication other than just the crime rate? And he said, well, the numbers stated. I said, well, now I have a question for you. I said, do you have any idea how many African-American males graduate from the 3 major colleges that are in this community who cannot find employment and have to leave the community for an opportunity? That number exceeds the number that is committing the crime, but that is not factored into that report. I said, so there's another way to look at this. There are other factors to this number. I said, so they're absolutely right that it is the absence of inclusion. But the number one reason is not because there are not enough to hire, and most of them are being incarcerated. That is, that is not the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sidney,
Wow.
you bring up a good point, right? So in the last, according to a report that was put out by the Sentencing Project, over the last 10 years, 25 of the 50 states in the US implemented or imposed some sort of restrictive voting guidelines that disproportionately impacted the Black or African American community. And some of those restrictions include, whether you've had blemishes, on your personal record as it relates to engaging with local law enforcement or federal authorities. The impact of that is that 3.1 million Black or African American adults have been barred from participating in local elections. And we know that local elections drive policy at the school board level, at the state level, at the local level, right? So just expanding on your comment, about crime, there are two ways to look at data. And I just love that perspective that you gave.
Yeah. The other comment I have, that when we talk about the racial wealth gap, is that we typically do not have conversations around the African American community even utilizing the word wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It only comes to bear when we are talking about the disparities. And so when we talk about changing the narrative and exposing, as much as we said, it's been centuries, right? And we are still making progress, but we have to elevate the progress that is being made for the generations that's coming behind us, because it still continues to be a heavy lift, but we can't stop pushing. We can't stop looking at all of the intersections of this that require our attention. And so when we talk about how do we address the racial wealth gap, is that it is the policy, it is being boots on the ground, brow to brow in our communities, but it is at the state capitol. It is helping to understand, or at least shining a light on, this is what we are looking to accomplish. This is what we are looking to contribute. We're not really asking for anything. We're putting in the work. So help us to become, and I hate using that term, help us to become, but join with us in the effort to ensure that we are participating at the maximum level that we all can.
At a state level, right, James, going back to what corporations can do. So, I think that corporations can actually also play a part in the conversation about voting rights, right? And how this disproportionately impacts Black or African Americans, as well as, conversations around, programs that they can also put in place in their communities, right? So Zions Bank locally in the state of Utah has a small business diversity banking program, James, and Sidney, that you know more about. But what really strikes me about Zions Bank and its deliberate effort to partner with minority communities in Utah is that this particular program has some sort of a business coaching component to it, and then shepherds the applicant, right, into the application process to ensure that they actually receive funding to expand their businesses, right? And I think that program that Zions Bank is rolling out, I'm sure there's several other banks across the country that does provide something like that. But from what I've heard about that program and read about it, I think it's a model that other banks across the country can also adopt and implement, right? And at a micro level, in partnerships with local Black chambers of commerce and other ethnic minority chambers of commerce, right? Zions Bank again has a diverse supplier program, James, that you're very familiar with, and Sidney as well, and sharing more information about those types of programs with the community so that we attract more minority businesses in to be diverse suppliers is another way, right, that corporations can actually impact our community, right? And then the third, Zions Bank has a partnership with a housing lending partner that supports home purchases for lower ethnic or economic income individuals, right? These are programs on the ground in Utah today, right? That are impacting our communities and providing opportunities for that leg up that we need to become financially viable. So, Sidni, everything that you said, just a few moments ago, was crucial. I just thought I should, put some icing around that cake,
Yeah.
talking about what corporations are doing today, with an example of Zions Bank in Utah.
Right. From that corporate perspective, these are the types of things that need to become systemic. And just recently having a conversation about that type of construct that is being implemented in quite frankly, in communities around the country. And what we find, and I want to point it out because this is really a positive, but when I talk about it from a systemic standpoint, when Zions or regions and they are really investing, this is an investment to be successful, right? And let's be clear, it's economics, and they get this whole economic ecosystem and everyone being able to participate and be a vital part of it. And so they have a solution that they are putting resources into. But in order for it to become systemic, I shouldn't go to one branch and get a certain communication, and Zach goes to another branch and he is ushered right into the program. And so then there is this notion from a corporate standpoint that they have to pay close attention to how these wonderful programs are being deployed. And so when it's systemic, it has that greater impact that you don't have to tell me, yeah, they have this program, but only go to the branch over on, because you're not going to get. And so it's a black eye for the organization. And the other part of it is that, to me, it's costing them opportunity for such a great program that does help us all address the racial wealth gap. So it certainly has to be systemic.
Well, I think another piece is, we talked about policies and procedures and things that corporations can support us. And it's even making us feel comfortable, right? Being just our natural selves, right? Sidni, we were in a meeting yesterday around the Crown Act, right? And there are 16 states that have passed legislation that allow, any minority to wear their hair in their natural state, whether it's Black, white, Native American, whatever. That's a big part, is let us wear our natural hair. Let us be safe in our work jobs. Don't discriminate us because, a woman shows up with curly hair, right? Or a ponytail or braids or locks or whatever it may be. It's their natural hair. And that should be accepted, right? For us just to be ourselves. And today, unfortunately, in a number of states, we can be disciplined, we can be discriminated against, we can be fired, and even our children can be sent home from school for wearing their natural hair. These are easy lifts. These are basic rights, right? Let us wear our hair the way we want to wear our hair.
And it almost sounds, it's parochial in a sense, but it sounds so elementary, is that this has economic implications. This has economic implications.
Well,
so heavy into that. Go ahead, Christian. And I have one last curveball to throw at y'all.
Okay, the economic implication of that, Sidni, is amazing to unpack, right? So, according to Nielsen in 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021, Black or African American consumption increased from $1.3 trillion to $1.6 trillion, give or take, right? And if you actually look at the categories that we spend majority of the money on, are kind of cosmetics, right? Which are women products that women use. Now, one of the interesting things about that is if you actually just take the number of cosmetic companies in the United States and find out how many of them are minority owned compared to our counterparts that are predominantly white, you will find it's an insignificant percentage in ownership, but the amount that we consume is disproportionate to other ethnic demographics and even the largest ethnic demographic in America, right? So what am I trying to say? I think that we also have a part to play as Black African Americans to step up and say, you know what? I will provide services to my community because there are economics around that, right? And there are positive economics around that. And partnering with a bank like Zion's or like Regions, as you mentioned, right, can help me receive the financing I need to go out and hire people that look like me, right? Because if, to your point, if we start looking at ourselves as a solution, Sidney, as business owners and Zach, then we end up changing the narrative because now I go out and I hire Black folks that look like me, right? And internally I deal with that, right? With any challenges that come up, and I'm not looking to another ethnic demographic to help me by hiring, right? I'm doing it myself, running my business the right way, and so I think there are two sides to look at that coin, because again, we have the numbers, $1.6 trillion. We're not the largest economic spender. We're outpaced by Hispanics and closely followed by Asians. But I still do think that if we shared those numbers with our community, right, we would empower more our people that look like us to go into business, provide solutions to our community. And by that, all ships rise because every ethnic demographic would be impacted. Supply, manufacturing, just everything all in all. And so we all will win from that improvement.
And go another hour for this conversation, but we're almost up here. There's so many other questions I want to ask you guys and try to summarize this all up for people that are listening in. But I do appreciate this time. And for those that do have questions for our panelists, you can go into the Q&A function there and post a question to our panelists here or the chat, whichever. I'll be watching both of them. But as people are gearing up and writing in their question, I wasn't going to ask this question. I did put it in our Google Doc earlier, but I was reading up on some things this morning about preparing for this conversation. I was like, I got to do it. 40 acres and a mule is what we were supposed to have. Never happened. And so now there's this conversation about reparations. And there's a huge debate, not only within the Black and white community, but even with the Black community of whether or not that should be something to look into. So I really just wanted to go around with you guys and gauge your opinion about reparations. And is that a real solution to what we've been talking about today?
Jim, that's a good question. I'll take a stab at it.
I have some thoughts. I just don't know if everyone's ready.
Yeah, I hear you.
When we think about reparations, right? Let's take a step back and actually analyze what happened with other ethnic minorities that were forcibly either brought to the United States or in similar geographies across the globe, right? And how we kind of took care of those communities. So, I think that when I believe history records that in the time of mass genocide against Jews, when there was that relocation exercise that happened globally, that each member of that community was handed a certain dollar amount, right? That allowed them to kind of start all over again. And we see that in America today. We see that in Israel as them being one of the most prosperous communities in terms of developing nations. And in the United States, they're remarkable business people, and they do commerce within their ecosystem. Okay, so us talking about reparations is not new. It's not an anomaly. It has been done in the past, right? That said, how do we work on that today? We understand that because of the financial literacy that impacts our communities disproportionately, that potentially giving each person 40 acres and a mule, the equivalent in today's dollar terms, may not be the most viable option, from an economic investment perspective, seeing that there are, roughly about 12 million Black African American households in the United States today, right? And so giving each of us 40 acres and the equivalent of a mule financially could, impact inflation even more than it has today. So what other ways can we work on supporting something that was promised that hasn't followed through, right? And I think about tax and tax policy, right? And what if there was an opportunity to impact or lower taxes on Black or African American families commensurate to what we would value 40 acres and a mule, right, in today's terms be, right? And so, and maybe we even make it a lot more exciting and say that, those taxes that would, be subsidized for Black or African American families impact business owners, right? And homeowners, right? So that we're also kind of triggering economic empowerment as well in a return on those investments, right? Back to the federal government. So those were my immediate thoughts and things that, that I have, kind of been mulling about already on my own. There's no scientific, data that suggests one strategy is better than the other. But just thinking about where we are as an economy today and what factors are actually impacting our economy, i.e. inflation, because of the amount of cash that was forced into the economy over the last 5 years. I think that some sort of a lax tax policy for Black African Americans could help.
Awesome. I would like to share, I will drop the link in our chat. But my former board chair, when I was the deputy director for the Louisiana Housing Alliance, is a senior fellow with Brookings, Andrew Perry. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. So he sums it up very eloquently and from an educational standpoint. And if you all don't mind, I would like to just share it so that we will have this in our recording since James tossed this curveball. He says, central to the idea of the American dream lies an assumption that we all have an equal opportunity to generate the kind of wealth that brings meaning to the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, boldly penned in the Declaration of Independence. The American dream pretends, not pretends, but portends that with hard work, a person can own a home, start a business, and grow a nest egg for generations to draw upon. This belief, however, has been defied repeatedly by the United States government's own decrees that denied wealth building opportunities for Black Americans. Today, the average white family has roughly 10 times the amount of wealth as the average Black family. White college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. Making the American dream an equitable reality demands the same US government that denied wealth to Blacks restore that deferred wealth through reparations to their descendants in the form of individual cash payments in the amount that will close the Black-white racial wealth gap divide. Additionally, reparations should come in the form of wealth building opportunities that address racial disparities around education, housing, business ownership. So of course he goes much further, but it makes it very real. It makes it very tangible. My position on it is that I do agree, but I also think that we have to address this from a taxing standpoint. So I agree with you, Christian, in that. But I also think that it would definitely be an economic stimulus if that were to happen.
Yeah, and I think we all agree this is a very complicated issue. And for me, I think one of the areas that I see would be kind of an easy lift is around education, right? You look at like our HBCUs, historically Black colleges, you look at the infrastructure of those HBCUs, you look at the endowments of those HBCUs. These are the institutions that train more African Americans to be participants in society with their education. And so even just a significant reinvestment into HBCUs where we can train African Americans better, more efficiently, to take advantage of the opportunities today is another area that this could be taken through.
Awesome. I appreciate y'all handling that curveball so eloquently for me. I knew you guys would handle that very well. That's why I put it out there for y'all. So I appreciate that. Well, this has been an incredible discussion. And like I mentioned, we could have gone for another hour about this. You guys unpack so much within this short amount of time. Even though it was 60 minutes, it felt like 3 with what you guys shared. But just to kind of summarize what we've dug into on closing the racial wealth gap, once again, generating wealth is huge as far as real estate. We lost out on a lot of that as far as multi-generational inheritance of that real estate. So, lending institutions, any corporations or organizations or policies regarding real estate can help attribute to closing the racial wealth gap. And then we also look at access to capital for small businesses, leveling the playing field, as I like to call it. Feel free to take that if you like, be sure to give me the credit for it. And then we look at the high access to higher education, right? There's always been huge debate regarding eliminating student loan debt, and the administration has been working on it, and there's been some him-hawing about it. But Christian, you shared so eloquently how that impacts us, and it really impacts. And so when we look at all 4 of those things, it really comes down to trillions of dollars into the bottom line on really the and that's what we all look at. Policymakers, corporations, we all look at the bottom line. And so framing around, here's the bottom line impact by fixing around those 4 issues alone adds incredible value to our communities, particularly the Black and Brown communities. And you guys shared how corporations can engage, how the community can engage, taking our bias lens off as well. So Sidni, Christian, Zach, appreciate you guys so much. And then around the screen real quick for any last 30-second thoughts that you'd like to share as we close. Sidni, I'll start with you.
I would just say that this is not an impossibility. It's just not an impossibility. And I'll really just leave it there. Yes, it takes work, but it also took work for us to get here where we are and to create the type of policies that we still suffer from. That required work too. And to undo it, work is required, but it is not an impossibility.
Wonderful. Christian?
Yeah, I would, first off, just want to thank you, James, for the invitation. Thank you to the other panelists for participating in the conversation and sharing ideas. As we were talking, I was seeing comments kind of come up, and Michelle DeGeorge is listening, and she's one of the newest members of the Association of African American Financial Advisors, and is a banker in Salt Lake City. And so I encourage everyone to spend time with her and help her grow her book of business. But more importantly, I think conversations like these enlighten other people to opportunities that are available to partner with the Black or African American community, and help us and help yourselves all kind of develop together. I don't have as many eloquent sayings as Sidni has, but I do have this one that I might have changed a little bit. But in high tide, all ships rise.
Yep.
And I think that if we have a true ethnic partnership between all the ethnic demographics in the United States, that we can see some significant impact and improvement in the economic well-being of all our communities in America today.
Yeah, and to Sidni and Christian and James, it's been a pleasure to share thoughts here today. And I would say, on what Christian just said, we're stronger united. This isn't a zero-sum game. We all can push these opportunities forward. And I think a big frustration in the African American community has been just lack of opportunities. And I say this over and over, but hire us or wire us, give us the opportunity, and we will take that opportunity and we will run through the hole like a Utah Ute football running back will do. And we will hit that hole hard and we will run hard. We just need the opportunity. And it's that straightforward. And I appreciate you guys.
Well, that's a good way to finish it off right there. Finishing Utah Ute style representing right there with Zach and I. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate this. And then, we'll just tune in for the next webinar. And thank you to all attendees, and be sure to go to Utah Business Magazine's website for a recording of this. We'll post it all over our platforms and social media as well. So thank you guys.